On today's video, we're chronicling the surprisingly small amount of adaptations the Fantastic Four have received in over 60 plus years of history. It's actually kind of surprising how little they've shown up. Let's talk about how to watch Fantastic Four.
It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and on today's video, we're taking a look at the history of the Fantastic Four in adapted media outside of comic books that doesn't include video games. We're sticking to movies and TV shows. And surprisingly, despite the team's long history, there's not that many adaptations. It's actually a little bit easier to do this guide than you'd think, considering how old the team is. However, there is something significant about every single one of these adaptations that we will talk about. And it won't just be the ones that are starring the Fantastic Four, but if they appeared in other media, don't worry, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes fans, that version of the Fantastic Four is included. And we're going to be going through the entire thing because it's actually not too hard to do so. And if you enjoy these types of viewing guides, be sure to hit the like button, let me know, let YouTube know you enjoyed this. Hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss out on future viewing guides. And check out the playlist of all the viewing guides. There was an hour-long Superman one recently. This one won't be as long, unless I somehow get on a tangent. But we're going to go into who is the Fantastic Four before we get into how the Fantastic Four have been adapted. So let's start with the basics. In fact, there's no better way to start with the basics of what the Fantastic Four are and how they came to be than this.
When top scientist Reed Richards led his team of explorers into space, they were blasted by a shower of cosmic rays. Endowed with incredible powers, their lives would change forever as they became the Fantastic Four.
So yeah, that basically covers it. 4 people go into space, get hit with cosmic rays, come back with superpowers. But really, that only tells you how their origin is, because the Fantastic Four themselves are a great team of characters. They're known as Marvel's first family because they are a family of characters. Of course, Sue and Johnny are siblings, Reed and Sue are in love, Ben is just a friend to everybody, but they have this really great family dynamic. They live in the same building together. There's a lot of things thrown back and forth. Ben and Johnny have a bit of a sibling rivalry thing, despite not actually being siblings. You know, Sue and Johnny have their dynamic. Ben and Reed have their dynamic, being best friends. So it all just kind of feels like one tight-knit group of people. Now, as I chronicled in a recent Fantastic Four video, not the only time there is these 4, there are multiple replacement team members in the Fantastic Four's history, and we've never really seen that in adaptations outside of one. There's like one adaptation that actually swaps out a Fantastic Four member, and it's only for one episode. So pretty much we always have the main 4 characters. We have Reed Richards, who's elastic. We have Sue, who can fade from sight. Johnny is the Human Torch, and the Thing just loves to fight. Yes, these 4 characters are the Fantastic Four in every adaptation, and they all basically have kind of the same personality types in each of them. It's a fairly consistent set of characters. There's not like some wild, crazy adaptation that completely throws everything you love out the window in order to make a movie that no one likes or remembers. Okay, we'll talk about that one later. But in terms of the Fantastic Four, it's pretty consistently well adapted, I think, and honestly, there's some few exceptions here and there, but the biggest point that makes a good Fantastic Four adaptation is the dynamic between its 4 lead characters. Without that dynamic, the entire thing falls apart. So with that said, there's really nothing else to go into the preliminaries of the Fantastic Four's history besides starting at its very first adaptation all the way back in the 1960s.
The Fantastic Four, starring Reed Richards, Sue Richards, Johnny Storm, Ben Grimm.
1967's The Fantastic Four, produced by Hanna-Barbera Studios. Now, this animated series ran for 20 episodes and features, of course, the Fantastic Four on multiple different adventures, fighting their different villains and going through a lot of different things. You may recognize this one if you watched a lot of Boomerang or rerun channels in general, because there's kind of a complication with watching this series outside of television broadcast. See, the series was produced by Hanna-Barbera, which is owned by Warner Brothers, whereas the Fantastic Four were made by Marvel, and that is now owned by Disney. Which means while this series does exist, it's not lost media by any means, there's no official streaming release nor an official DVD release in North America. So if you're looking for it, you gotta go find good old YouTube uploads. But this series will give you kind of a lot of great hijinks, a lot of mission week-to-week type things. I was gonna say mission by week, but that just sounded weird. Anyways, the point being is that every week you got a new villain, every episode something crazy happens. It's also got a lot of moments in it that are unintentionally hilarious, and that has led to a lot of both official and unofficial compilations of some of the funniest moments from the show. It's got its own legendary status in that regard, and it is actually honestly a pretty solid adaptation of the Fantastic Four, circa the 1960s. And that is kind of the legacy the show has. In terms of voice cast, Mr. Fantastic was voiced by Gerald Moore, Invisible Woman was voiced by Joanne Flug, The Thing was voiced by Paul Frees, and Human Torch by Jack Flounders. So you get a pretty well-rounded voice cast. Now, I won't say this is the best adaptation of the Fantastic Four, but if you want to go back to that classic Hanna-Barbera goodness, this is a pretty good show to check out.
Now, together with Herbie the Robot, the newest member of the group, they have become the greatest team of superheroes the world has ever known.
Now, the next adaptation of the Fantastic Four was in 1978 with the New Fantastic Four. Though officially just titled The Fantastic Four, it's referred to as the New Fantastic Four in multiple different ways. This lasted for 13 episodes and was notable for including Herbie as a main character of the team, as opposed to Johnny Storm the Human Torch. Now, the reason for that is a lot of internet myths, but the real answer is that Johnny Storm was getting put into a TV pilot for a Human Torch TV series by Universal, so the rights to the character were off limit, so they swapped in Herbie. It's kind of interesting they didn't swap in one of the other replacement team members that had happened at the time, like, I don't know, Medusa or Crystal, but instead we got Herbie as part of the main team, which is kind of a funny little thing. And it also gives Herbie some legendary status in that regard. In fact, I'm pretty sure Herbie debuted in this show before transitioning into the comics themselves. Now, this show is not produced by Hanna-Barbera, but instead by Die Partei Freeling Enterprises. That means the show is even harder to come by, though not impossible, as it does get around in TV airings. No home video release, no official streaming release. You're going to have to look for it on its own. Of course, we had a completely different voice cast. Mr. Fantastic was voiced by Mike Road, Invisible Woman was voiced by Jenny Tyler, Thing was voiced by Ted Cassidy, and Herbie was voiced by good old Frank Welker. So you have pretty much a pretty good standing point of voice cast from the 1970s. This show, I don't think, hits as much as the original Hanna-Barbera cartoon did, at least for a lot of people, and it's mostly notable for including Herbie on the main team.
Thing ring, do your thing!
You're probably like, man, you're going through these first couple shows kind of quick. Why are you doing that? Because I needed runtime to explain Fred and Barney Meet the Thing. Here we go. Okay, so Hanna-Barbera was making a ton of shows in the 60s and 70s. They were a factory of entertainment. They put out so many different shows, and yes, sometimes they were very formulaic. Sometimes you wonder, how can there be so many teen bands that are involved with fighting crime? But that's just how Hanna-Barbera was running things. They had an idea for a show where a kid had a magic ring that would allow him to turn into a superhero form. They had a partnership with Marvel, pre-existing for some other material, and they thought, hey, can we use one of your characters? And The Thing was chosen for The Thing. And this is interesting because this is not a faithful adaptation of Ben Grimm, but it is notable in its own right for those that watch the series. So, for example, instead of Ben Grimm being an astronaut who gets cosmic rays that eventually turns into a monstrous form and actually has a heart of gold, this is Benji Grimm, a teenager who has two rings he can put together that say, Thing rings, do your thing, and he can turn into the Thing in a superhero alter ego, and he has a bunch of friends. There's no other members of the Fantastic Four in this show, nor does it follow any comic storyline that existed, though the legacy of Thing rings, do your thing made it all the way into the comics years and years later. Now, the fun part about this show is that it was officially aired as part of a programming block called Fred and Barney Meets the Thing. Now, in the actual episodes, you will not see Fred and Barney meet the Thing, kind of like how you never really see Frankenstein Jr. meet the Impossibles. It's just the way Hanna-Barbera structured their shows. It's just in the intro and in maybe some of the commercial bumpers. Now, the intro is the only surviving thing online I can find for Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, which is why I'm going to just play it for you right now. So now whether there was commercial bumpers featuring these three characters meeting each other didn't happen in the episodes themselves. And so because of this, the Fred and Barney Show episodes and the Thing episodes have re-aired separately many times over the years, though never had an official home video release that was available in North America. There's no official streaming release either. And the Fred and Barney segments are available on digital, but the Thing segments have been locked away, probably for that same licensing rift between Marvel owning the Thing and Hanna-Barbera being owned by Warner Brothers. So it's a little bit of a weird spot. But if you are looking for the Thing, it's very easy to find the show. It lasted 26 segments, because typically the episodes contain segments of Fred and Barney and the Thing. It's usually 3 segments in one episode. And so it would alternate 2 Fred and Barney, 1 Thing, 2 Thing, 1 Fred and Barney, that kind of thing. But that is basically the long story short on that series. Iconic and memorable for those who remember it, weird for those looking back at it in retrospect. Moving into the modern cartoon era, let's talk about the Marvel Animated Universe, beginning with 1994's Fantastic Four. Now, this series was my introduction to the Fantastic Four, and it still kicks butt in its second season. We'll talk about that. So, originally airing as part of the Marvel Action Hour alongside Iron Man, the first season of 13 episodes aired in 1994 to the first part of 1995. This series was on syndication, so it wasn't on a normal TV network. It was just kind of like a if your affiliate picked it up kind of thing. And this first season is very campy, very goofy, and a lot more Silver Age inspired. For example, the main lyrics of the theme song for season 1 are like this.
No need to fear, they're here. Just call the Four. Fantastic Four.
And then we move into season 2 in 1995, which was another 13-episode season that aired in a Marvel Action Universe block alongside Iron Man and Biker Mice from Mars. And much like Iron Man, Fantastic Four was retooled for a more serious, more modern tone, and they updated the intro to have the main opening be more like this. So that was kind of the way that the Fantastic Four ran, just like Iron Man ran. First season, more Silver Age. Second season, more modern, which actually I think is kind of cool. And personally speaking, I think the second season is an improvement in quality, though I do think the first season is pretty solid. Now, that being said, when it comes to the series, it is in the interconnected Marvel Animated Universe, and we'll get to other appearances of the Fantastic Four in a moment. The important part here is that you can watch the show pretty easily. It's on Disney Plus in most regions, and there was a complete series DVD set released, oh boy, way back in the early 2000s. There is a way to watch the show pretty easily. Now, depending on where you are in Disney Plus, there may be an episode missing. I have noticed the first Skrull episode was not included on US Disney Plus for a while, and it sort of vanishes and comes back from time to time. Not exactly sure what's up with that episode, but if you are looking for it, pretty easy to find online since there was a DVD release to make that simpler. Also, kind of a neat thing about this show is it's directly adapted from the comics, much like how Iron Man, X-Men, Spider-Man, Hulk were all adapting comic storylines. But with Fantastic Four, you can attribute pretty much every episode directly to original Fantastic Four issues, most of which from the Jack Kirby Stan Lee era. And that's actually pretty cool because usually comic book adaptations don't have a direct, like, this is exactly this issue storyline adapted for this show. But you can do that with the Fantastic Four of the 90s. For voice cast, it's one of the best voice casts, I think, for the Fantastic Four. We have Mr. Fantastic, voiced by Bo Weaver, Invisible Woman, voiced by Laurie Allen, The Thing, voiced by Chuck McCann, and with Human Torch, he was voiced by Brian Austin Green in Season 1 and Quentin Flynn in Season 2. And this cast, I think, is great. They got the voices down. They're very classic, iconic-sounding versions of the characters. Now, in the first season of the 1996 Incredible Hulk series, the episode 8, Fantastic Fortitude, featured Mr. Fantastic and The Thing, once again voiced by Weaver and McCann. And this was a episode crossing over and teaming up with the Hulk. It's a pretty solid episode. If you're looking for this one, it is on Disney Plus as part of the Hulk series. This series only had a complete series DVD in Region 2, nothing in North America Region 1, which is a bummer because that show was amazing. If I do a Hulk guide someday, I want to talk the praises of the 90s Hulk show that everyone overlooks. Then in 1997, for Season 5 of Spider-Man, during the Secret Wars crossover event multi-parter, the Fantastic Four were involved with that because they were adapting the Secret Wars comic, and the Fantastic Four were big parts of that. They brought the entire team in. They have a redesigned look. They look a little bit different than they did in their show, but it is supposed to be the same versions. However, the voice cast is mostly changed out. Quentin Flynn returned to play Human Torch, but everybody else was switched to different actors depending on where they were kind of positioning the recording session. But because of that, Mr. Fantastic was voiced by Cam Clark, Invisible Woman by Gail Mathias, and The Thing by Patrick Penny. They do a pretty good job. They sound like they're doing voices that are similar to the ones in the 90s show, so you won't really notice that there even was a change if you didn't know about it. And that pretty much wraps up the Marvel Animated Universe. The Fantastic Four did not appear in the other shows as much as characters like Iron Man or Spider-Man even did. There was some weird licensing things. They were supposed to show up in some other shows and couldn't due to the weird, like, this is airing on this network, this is airing on this network. It's all Marvel Animation working on it, but there's different studios and different contracts. So that's just where the Fantastic Four appeared, and honestly, it was a pretty good time.
Doom, it's clobbering time. The Fantastic Four.
And now we come to one of the most legendary stories involving the Fantastic Four. 1994's The Fantastic Four, the first ever Fantastic Four live-action movie produced. And I say produced and not released because, officially speaking, this has never been officially released by the studios that owned it. This is one of the saddest tales in Hollywood. This Fantastic Four movie was produced by the producers' intents to just hold on to the rights to Fantastic Four. They didn't intend to release it, they just had to make it to hold on to the rights to have a bigger studio with bigger budgets make their own movie. And there's a lot of shenanigans behind the scenes. Honestly, shenanigans is putting it lightly. Some awful stuff happened. Mostly because the cast and main crew of this movie were not informed that they were making an ashcan film, and they were actually producing something and putting their heart and soul into this movie, thinking it was going to be a big break for their careers. And honestly, that kind of frustrates me as someone who's worked in the film industry and someone that talks about it a lot. This movie itself has seen the light of day thanks to wonderful amounts of bootleg copies out there. It is not hard to find it, but should you look for it? I think yes, because to date, excluding the most recent Fantastic Four film I haven't seen yet because time of recording hasn't come out yet, this is my favorite live-action adaptation of the Fantastic Four, hands down. Is it the highest budget? No. Are the effects kind of weird? Yes, but they were finished in a basement without anyone's official permission because they were like, let's just finish the movie. We want to finish our job. Was this movie produced with a $1 million budget and therefore lacking in some production areas? Yes. However, what makes up for it is the actors involved put their all into this material. They put their all into these characters. They did the research. They did the work. They really portrayed what I felt were the most authentic versions of the Fantastic Four, and by far and away the most authentic Doctor Doom we have ever seen on film. Period. And I don't think anyone's topping him anytime soon. Joseph Culp's Doctor Doom is amazing.
I knew it would be the fitting instrument of my revenge. But just think, and what is in each of you is all in me. Well, imagine that. And a special treat for you, Mr. Grimm. After I have cleansed you of your power, you may watch my men kill the one who claims to love me just before you die. Oh.
Adding to this, the cast itself. Alex Hyde White was a great Mr. Fantastic. Rebecca Stabb did a great Sue Storm. Michael Bailey Smith was a great Ben Grimm, and the Thing prosthetics they did and the makeup work I thought looked great, especially considering how limited budget they had to work with. And Jay Underwood is a great, charming Johnny Storm. This movie really deserved a lot better, and it still deserves, I think, a proper release. And it's also nice to hear, we know officially, that the main four Fantastic Four cast members are in Fantastic Four First Steps for a cameo, which really feels like a nice gesture from Marvel Studios and the people over there to include and represent the history of these characters on film, and that warms my heart. If you're wanting to know more about the behind the scenes of this movie, there is a documentary called Doomed, The Untold Story of Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four. By the way, Roger Corman was a producer on this. He wasn't the director. It always gets called Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. Yeah, he produced it, but he didn't do the directing part of it. But point being, if you're looking for this movie, you can find it online. If you're looking for that documentary, I would recommend checking that out after watching the movie. It is worth your time. It really is. Don't go into it expecting some big, lavish Hollywood movie. Go into it looking for a heartfelt adaptation of the Fantastic Four with a crew of people just trying to do the best they could under really rough circumstances. I appreciate this movie a lot, and I highly recommend you check it out. Now, the first experience a lot of people probably had with the Fantastic Four was 2005's Fantastic Four, directed by Tim Story. This movie is honestly pretty nostalgic, but I do think it does lack some elements that were sort of cleaned up in its next movie. But overall, we're talking about the Fantastic Four. It's once again an origin story telling how the Fantastic Four came together, and this was a pretty successful enough movie that it got a sequel in 2007 with Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, which personally, on a character performance level, I enjoy a little bit more because I feel like the dynamic was settled in a little bit better. Now, these two movies are known as the Tim Story movies. There was no third movie, however, they are pretty well remembered. And yes, these were the movies that got made because they held onto the rights by producing the 1994 film. A lot of crazy stuff went behind the scenes, but these were the movies that we got. Much higher budget, much better rendered visual effects, of course, but in some ways not as much heart. That being said, I do quite enjoy both movies. They are kind of comfort films for me, and I would recommend checking them out if you want a primer on the Fantastic Four in a modern setting, which I think is kind of what they were going for. Now, in terms of cast, we had Ian Grufford as Mr. Fantastic, Jessica Alba as Invisible Woman, Michael Chiklis as The Thing, and Chris Evans as Human Torch. Chris Evans, I think, was the one that did the gross breakout star after this. He went and became Captain America later. This was, I think, a good launching platform for a lot of people involved, and they do a great job with everything they're given. Now, if you are looking for these movies, they did do a Blu-ray 2-pack a few years ago. It's still regularly around and viable, and the movies are on Disney Plus in pretty much most regions, maybe not all, but they're pretty easy to come by being modern Hollywood films. See, now at this point in the video, you're like, oh, that's why you rushed some of the earlier stuff. You have all these tidbits to give us. Here's some more. Fantastic Four, World's Greatest Heroes. To date, the most recent Fantastic Four animated series, premiering in 2006 and lasting 26 episodes. This was done to tie into the recent movie. Came out between the first two Tim Story movies. And adding to this, this was a co-production between Marvel Studios and Moonscoop Productions, which was a French company. Now, this show, unfortunately, got screwed over. Oh my god, how many times have I got to say that in this video? Because it's happening a lot. This was overlooked because Cartoon Network had a very hectic airing schedule. They aired like 8 episodes, took it off air, brought it back later to promote Rise of the Silver Surfer, took it off again. I don't even know if all 26 aired in the US. They did air internationally. And luckily, it did release completely on DVD, and the series is available on Disney Plus for you to watch. But should you watch it over anything else? Honestly, with the Fantastic Four, you can watch everything they've ever been in, and it's not going to take you that long. But this is my favorite Fantastic Four animated series, and the reason why, character dynamics. Because I really do love the 90s Fantastic Four show and a lot of what it did, but the character dynamics were a little weaker because every episode was really pushing like the big event, here's the big major storyline we're doing. So it didn't feel like the characters developed as well together. But in World's Greatest Heroes, they kind of took a back seat to some of those. They weren't allowed to use Silver Surfer and Galactus, so we didn't have any huge major things, and so you gotta have a lot more character personality stuff. I honestly really enjoy the voice cast and the performances in this series, and it is my personal favorite Fantastic Four animated adaptation. And that's not a common thought, but I do really like it. And I think the fun part about the show too is it has a really interesting, unique art style that's not something you normally see in Marvel animation. Adding to this, voice cast, like I said, was fantastic. Mr. Fantastic voiced by Hiro Kanagawa, Invisible Woman was voiced by Laura Gilchrist, The Thing was voiced by Brian Dobson, and Human Torch was voiced by Christopher Jacquot. I really recommend checking out this series. I feel like a lot of people haven't seen it. And on top of that, it did adapt the She-Hulk joining the Fantastic Four in the place of Ben Grimm, which, like I said, doesn't happen as often in the adaptations. It does happen a lot in the comics with temporary members, and that episode is pretty terrific. I really do like this show, and I do highly recommend checking it out.
Reinforcements may be in order.
Avengers, assemble! They're jamming my communications. Shield!
Now, while the Fantastic Four have not had their own animated series since World's Greatest Heroes, they have shown up in other people's shows quite frequently. Starting off, we'll talk about 2009's The Superhero Squad show. Now, this show was meant to time with a preschool line, but it was actually pretty smartly written, and it's a pretty fun time. They bring in a lot of characters from the Marvel Universe. Of course, we had Mr. Fantastic, voiced by James Marsters, which is a pretty big get. Invisible Woman was voiced by Tara Strong. The Thing was voiced by Dave Boat. Not the first nor the last time that's going to happen. Human Torch was voiced by Travis Willingham. This series did not feature the Fantastic Four in every episode, but they were in This Silver, This Server, which is Season 1, Episode 3, Enter Dormammu, Season 1, Episode 5, If This Be My Thanos, Season 1, Episode 12, Election of Evil, Season 1, Episode 20, Last Exit Before Doomsday, Season 1, Episode 25, and This Al Dente Earth, Season 1, Episode 26. Then for Season 2, they were in Double Negotiation at the World's End, Episode 7, Planet Hulk, which was Episode 19, Brouhaha at the World's Bottom, Episode 21. So it's pretty cool the Fantastic Four were featured as part of the series. Now, the series was partially released on DVD. I don't believe the entire thing was, but it is streaming on Disney Plus in most regions. Then we have one of the most famous and most popular anime adaptations of the Fantastic Four, their appearance in the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This was one of those shows that just got it. You just knew watching it. You're like, oh, these people get it. The people making this show understand what makes the Marvel characters work. And so we did get several appearances of the Fantastic Four in the second season of the show in 2012. This voice cast was quite interesting. We had D. Bradley Baker playing Mr. Fantastic, Aaron Torpy playing Invisible Woman, Fred Tatasciore voicing The Thing, and David Kaufman voicing Human Torch. And so that was a pretty cool voice cast, and their designs were very classic comic inspired. They had kind of like that evergreen feel to them. In the episodes they appeared in for Season 2, Episode 1, The Private War of Doctor Doom, Episode 10, Prisoner of War, Episode 12, Secret Invasion, Episode 18, Yellow Jacket, Episode 23, New Avengers, and Episode 26, Avengers Assemble. Now, note that Season 2 of Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes is more serialized even than Season 1, and so the Fantastic Four are involved in some major storylines like Secret Invasion and the big old battle at the end of the show, so you might as well just watch the entirety of Earth's Mightiest Heroes and then enjoy the Fantastic Four sprinkled throughout, because Earth's Mightiest Heroes is a great show, and it always deserves the love it gets. If you are looking for the show, it was completely released on DVD and it is streaming on Disney Plus in most regions. Now let's talk about the other animated shows that the Fantastic Four appeared in, which were in a connected universe. So every time I talk about the Disney XD Marvel shows, a lot of continuity problems come up, but luckily, because the Fantastic Four were banned from appearing in media outside of movies, and they were not allowed to have merchandise, and their comic was canceled, they only showed up 3 times in the Disney XD shows, and the 3 shows that are unequivocally in the same universe, so we don't gotta worry about any of that right now. Also, doesn't it suck the Fantastic Four were put into a box by Disney because they wanted to wrestle the movie rights away from Fox? Insane times that I'm glad we're done with. But that being said, there was only 3 appearances, like I said, in 2013 prior to that ban happening. Ultimate Spider-Man's Season 2, Episode 14, The Incredible Spider-Hulk, featured an appearance by The Thing, voiced again by Dave Boat. 2013's Avengers Assemble, Season 1, Episode 14, Hulk's Day Out. The Thing once again showed up as played by Dave Boat. And then in 2013's Hulk and the Agents of Smash, Season 1, Episode 24, Monster No More, we had Mr. Fantastic, voiced by Robert Atkin Downes, Invisible Woman, voiced by Kari Wahlgren, Human Torch, voiced by James Earl Taylor, and The Thing, voiced by Dave Boat. None of these episodes appeared on a DVD release, and they're only available on Disney Plus in most regions. Those 3 episodes, quick brief appearance of the Fantastic Four, they probably would have appeared more often, just like we only got a few appearances of Wolverine and none of the other X-Men, if there wasn't that embargo that came down. That stupid embargo. Really glad we're beyond that. Oh hey, next we get to talk about the reason that embargo existed. There has been a lot said on the internet over the years of 2015's Fantastic Four, stylized as Fant4stick, that I really can't add any more new to the conversation. I can say, as a Fantastic Four fan, don't watch this movie. Don't even bother. Watch everything else. Literally everything else in the viewing guide. Don't watch this. This was an attempt to do a darker, grittier, more mature reboot of the Fantastic Four. using the Ultimate Fantastic Four comic as a basis, but missing the entire point of Ultimate Fantastic Four, and producing this good old 9% on Rotten Tomatoes movie that I have never found a single fan of. If you love this movie, good for you. I'm happy for you. I'm glad you see some joy in this. I absolutely don't like this movie. If you want to skip to the next segment, because I'm going to go into this, by all means, you may go to the next segment now, because I don't like this movie, and I cannot recommend it to anyone. As a Fantastic Four fan, the movie is incredibly awful to me, and as a movie fan, this movie is incredibly awful to me. It just does not work. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes turmoil. There could be a whole documentary about this and what went wrong, and honestly, it would be more interesting than the movie itself, because the movie itself ends up being a boring slog where almost nothing happens, and then it puts in character choices that you ask, why would anyone think that was okay? I don't like this movie. However, that fault does not fall onto its cast. Miles Teller played Mr. Fantastic, Kate Mara was Invisible Woman, Jamie Bell was The Thing, and Michael B. Jordan was Human Torch. He bounced back and got to be in Black Panther, and now he does all kinds of cool movies like Sinners. Go watch Sinners instead. Unless you're not old enough to watch Sinners, in which case, go watch anything else on this viewing guide instead. The point being, Four Stick is not a good movie. It's not a good adaptation of the Fantastic Four, and Fox pretty much rushed it and made it so they could meet their deadline to not lose their movie rights. And then because of that, Disney got this petty idea in their heads that they didn't want this movie promoted with anything they made, and so that's how we lost the Fantastic Four for several years in the comics, animation, toys, and video games. I'm so glad we're beyond this era. Oh boy, there's other shows the Fantastic Four showed up in. Let's move along. Let's talk about Spidey and His Amazing Friends, longest running Spidey show on the record to be having the most episodes of any Marvel cartoon, and pretty darn popular. This show is pretty awesome for kids. I've watched a few episodes of Spidey and His Amazing Friends, and if I was like the target demographic, this would be my favorite show of all time. I would never stop watching it. I'm almost 30, so I don't watch all of it, but I have seen some episodes here and there. It's pretty great. As a show for kids, I can't imagine anything better, honestly. It's really solid. It hits that preschool demographic. You know, if you have your 2 to 4 year olds or 2 to 5 year olds, and going up to 6 or 7, show's pretty fun. Action-packed, fun adventures, cool gadgets, and lots of guest stars, like The Thing. So the first Fantastic Four member to appear in the show so far, time of recording, which time of recording is July 23rd, 2025. This show has featured The Thing in a few different episodes. In Season 2, Episode 50, Hide and Seek. In Season 2, Episode 52, The Unbelievable Rosh Hashanah. If I mispronounce that, I apologize. Dome Alone for Season 2, Episode 54. Thing is voiced by Andy Milder. Now, this show is on Disney+. It doesn't really have any home video releases, but it was cool that The Thing showed up. Specifically, the Season 2, Episode 52 episode was about a Jewish holiday I never heard of before, and that was actually the first one with The Thing that I watched, because I heard about it, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. I learned things from the preschool show. Show is also educational, which is great. Now, outside of this, we haven't seen the Fantastic Four in anything else except in Lego Marvel Avengers Mission Demolition. In that TV special, Invisible Woman was voiced by Vanessa Marshall, and The Thing was voiced by Roger Craig Smith, and they appear briefly in it. It's nice to see the Fantastic Four starting to get integrated into Marvel animated shows. It's just unfortunate that we don't really have any Marvel animated shows that aren't the MCU besides X-Men 97 and Spidey and His Amazing Friends and Iron Man and His Amazing Friends, or whatever that show's called, because I forgot the name of it, but they spun it off into an Iron Man show. Point being, I'm gonna hopefully we see more Fantastic Four. We'll see if the new movie does well. Speaking of the new movie, it's the MCU Fantastic Four. But before we get to the new movie, let's talk about where they've popped up so far. In 2022's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we saw an alternate universe version of Mr. Fantastic played by John Krasinski. He was certainly there for a minute. In 2024's Deadpool and Wolverine, we saw a return of Chris Evans as Human Torch for a brief cameo in that movie, and they kind of played up the fact that he'd been Captain America. It was done for comedy and laughs, but it did seem like he was playing a little bit rougher and tumbler of a version from the Tim Story movies. May not be exactly the same, but definitely a variant of that version. But of course, our main debut for the Fantastic Four is 2025's The Fantastic Four First Steps. So interestingly enough, this movie takes place on its own universe where the Fantastic Four are the only heroes that exist, and they have to come face to face with Galactus and his Herald the Silver Surfer. Lots of different things going on here that makes it a little bit more different and dynamic than other adaptations of the Fantastic Four we've seen so far. Doesn't seem to be an origin story, seems to be more of like they've existed for years, people love them, how do they deal with their greatest threat? Now, this movie is going to be a standalone MCU movie, so if you've seen none of the prior MCU movies, you should be able to understand it, though it will be leading into the next two big Avengers movies, Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, coming out in the next few years, as the Fantastic Four will be playing major parts in those movies, which is honestly pretty exciting. The cool part about the Fantastic Four is that family dynamic, and from what I've seen from the trailers and the TV spots and some clips and interviews, they seem to have nailed the family dynamic. And like I said, if you can nail the family dynamic, the adaptation works itself out almost every time. The Fantastic Four are about family, and it's about that dynamic of characters, and that's why I love them so much. And that's pretty much a through line through every adaptation, except for Fant Four Stick. They did not nail anything there. So I hope you enjoyed that viewing guide. I got a little more opinionated than I normally do when it comes to these viewing guides, but I had to talk about Fant Four Stick, and I also wanted to talk about some of the other adaptations that I felt are completely overlooked by people. The Fantastic Four are my favorite Marvel team. They're one of my favorite Marvel comics of all time. I always enjoy a Fantastic Four story. The only time I don't is when they don't nail that dynamic between the characters. And that's why most of this guide I can heartily recommend. But that being said, I hope you enjoy some Fantastic Four. I hope you enjoy the characters that I have loved for years, and I hope that this viewing guide was helpful to you to kind of chart your way through the path of the multiverse of the Fantastic Four. There will be more viewing guides in the future, like I've said. I got plenty planned. There's a big one coming up in October. That one's going to be fun for many other reasons. And you want to stick around for that, so if you haven't already, please hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss out. Hit the like button to let me know you enjoyed this. Tells YouTube you enjoyed it. Sends it out to more people. Share this with your friends. Talk about Fantastic Four. Leave any comments down below if you disagree with me on opinions. Totally cool. Just keep it civil. Keep it real. If you are the world's biggest Fant Four Stick fan, please show up to my comments. I'd love to have a conversation. Anyways, on that note, if you'd love to continue our conversation, we have the Discord server in the link below. You can also join as a channel member and get perks like early access to videos. Let's give some special shoutouts to our channel members. Special shout out to our channel member Captain Tiers, Spin-54, MasterBen95, Forever1000, Super Shaddix Boom, Mr. Smelly Potato, Jamie's World, Jamie Harper, Mars the Star Droid, Patty, Common Spidey, Liam Peterson, Common Jojo, Mohammed Diop, Josh Frisch, K-Floss, Gokai Gamer, Michael, Koopaman, Doge9789, LFIV, and Mach's Dent. Thank you to members and viewers alike for your support of this channel. If you so wish, I'm on social media on Blue Sky and Letterboxd. You can also find my wonderful graphic designer on social media and Discord at DarkClaw643. You can find Hero Club at hero-club.com for entertainment, news, and interviews, and more. And until next time, this is Soundout saying, it's clobbering time! Flame on!